Hi. In this presentation, we're going to talk about professional organizations related to the profession of veterinary medicine and veterinary technology. So one of the first things that we'll talk about here is what professional organizations are there? And actually, before I go into that, one of the things that I will tell you is that I tend to use the term professional organizations and professional associations interchangeably. And so you might hear through this presentation me talking about organizations or associations. Those are the same thing. Okay, so I just want to let everyone know that I do use those terms interchangeably. So what organizations are there? Well, there are national organizations, and of course, since these are national in scope, they're going to tend to be bigger organizations than some other more local organizations. And so this is not a complete list. There are many national professional organizations out there. But the top one here that I have on my list is the National Association of Veterinary Technicians in America. And that is the national organization for veterinary technicians in the United States. And that's, they do let other folks join, but that is our national organization. There are other organizations, as you can see on here. There's an Association of Veterinary Technician Educators, so folks like myself that are veterinary technicians, but I work in academia and teach classes. So AVTE is an organization that I belong to. It might not be an organization that someone who's a veterinary technician and works in private small animal veterinary practice would be a part of. And then, there's the American Animal Hospital Association, AAHA. AAHA is the organization that's created the hospital standards, so you can be AAHA accredited. And I have the American Veterinary Medical Association on here, the AVMA. That is the national association or organization for veterinarians in the United States. And I will say that, that is one that actually we cannot join as veterinary technicians. And so, but I include it on here because it is it's a major professional organization related to our profession. The American Association of Veterinary State Boards, and this would probably not be an organization that people, that veterinary technicians would run out and join, but it is an important organization. They're actually the folks that own and administer the VTNE, or the Veterinary Technician National Exam. The last one I have listed on here is the American Association for Laboratory Animal Science, and this is an organization that is dedicated to lab animal science, as it says in the title. And they've actually developed several different tiers of lab animal certification that people can earn. So as I said, this is just a small example of some different national organizations. There are many more out there, but I did want to make sure I pointed out that the National Association of Veterinary Technicians in America is the national organization for our profession. There's state-level organizations as well. There are also some regional organizations, but for the most part, we have national organizations and then we have state-level organizations. And so for state level, most states in the United States have their own state veterinary technician association. For example, in the state of Indiana, we have the Indiana Veterinary Technician Association that's open for veterinary technicians to join at the state level. And so I usually tell students that if they have an interest in being involved in an organization, sometimes it's better to start at the state level organization because those are usually smaller and it'd be easier for people to actually get involved and do things with the organization. So that's, at least a few of the different organizations that are out there. So why are they important? Why would we join these? And, I've had students in the past that say, well, it's like a union, it helps protect your job. I would say that there's a pretty big difference between professional organizations and unions. Professional organizations are there to help support the profession and drive change within the profession. Unions are really more there to protect workers, okay? Make sure they're paid decent wages, that they have good benefits, job security, things like that. Okay, so there might be some similarities, but they're not really the same thing at all. So, like I said, professional organizations typically are what's going to drive change within the profession, and that's a big reason why they're important. And just to give you some examples here, one of the things that NAVTA has been working on now for a while is looking into trying to get our title changed. There are a lot of people out there that feel like the title veterinary technician really doesn't do our profession justice, and that it causes a lot of confusion out in the general public. What's a technician? What do technicians do? But a lot of people, probably almost everyone, knows what a nurse does. And so using a title like veterinary nurse could be something that would help advance our profession and help the general public know what we do. The other thing they're working on is creating a national credential. Again, as you'll see in modules later on in the course, when we talk more about credentialing, each state basically comes up with their own rules and regulations regarding the credentialing of veterinary technicians. And that's one of the things that has led to the fact that depending on what state you live in, you might have a different title. So we have multiple titles depending on where we live in the United States. The AVMA also is a big organization, and one of the things that they'll do is they actually pay lobbyists and will lobby state and federal governments when laws are being written or changed. An example of this was recently they were lobbying a congressional committee in Washington, D.C. that was trying to get some legislation passed regarding prescriptions in veterinary medicine. And that's could potentially be a law that would require veterinarians to give written prescriptions to clients. And that's not something that the AVMA is in favor of. And so that's just one example of something that the AVMA does when it comes to lobbying for changes in laws or new laws to be created. And, they support the interests of the profession's members. By doing that, providing, like NAVTA provides a journal every 2 months. It comes out 6 times a year. And so we can read CE articles in there that we have an interest in. The same with the AVMA. The AVMA has JAVMA, the Journal of the AVMA, to help support interests of the profession's members. And it just, professional organizations can be very important because they can facilitate communication and connection among members of the profession. I think, oftentimes one of the big advantages that we think about with professional organizations is networking. That if we join and are active in a professional organization, that sets us up to meet other people in the profession that we maybe wouldn't have met had we not been actively involved in an organization. Helps us connect with them, networking, making connections, communicating with other people in the field that maybe we wouldn't necessarily communicate with if we weren't a member of this organization. So, hopefully you can kind of see that these organizations are important to our profession and can help make change happen. So a common question is, why should you join? Students often will ask, and graduates too, what will I get out of it? Why should I spend that money? Because most of the time you do have to pay dues to join a professional organization. And sometimes we're lucky in veterinary medicine, or we're lucky in veterinary technology that the dues to join organizations for veterinary technicians are often fairly inexpensive. It costs $60 to join as a full membership, to join with a full membership in NAVTA. And full membership means that you are a credentialed veterinary technician and that you're joining, and you would have the ability to run for an elected office on the executive board. You would have the ability to vote in elections, things like that. So, $60 spread out over a year really is pretty inexpensive. So anyway, that question of what will I get out of it is commonly asked. And so I think sometimes we maybe, think about this and think, well, if you join, you're going to get a more powerful organization, right? One of the things that I like to tell students is there is definitely strength in numbers. If we go back to the example of the AVMA and the lobbying that they do, the AVMA has over 100,000 members. And if the AVMA only had 500 members or even 1,000 members, would the politicians take them seriously when they went and lobbied them to change laws? Not probably as seriously as they do with 100,000 members, right? So just the act of joining and adding your name to the membership list makes that organization more powerful. And again, we've already talked about a little bit an advantage of joining a professional organization is that you'll have networking opportunities to meet other people in the profession that you may not normally have met and interacted with. Could be some potential leadership opportunities. This is a great thing if you are want to be involved in an organization and want to be in a leadership position. Joining an organization and being involved is certainly a way that you could do that. All of the organizations typically are going to have some kind of a group of people, whether it's an executive board or whatever they want to call it, that are going to be leaders within the organization. And any members really typically would have an opportunity to try to be in one of those leadership positions. So another good benefit of joining a professional organization is just the continuing education. Like I mentioned previously, if you join NAVTA, you get the NAVTA journal that has continuing education in it. And just, being able to attend various conferences. Most conferences you can attend even if you're not a member of that organization that's putting the conference on. A lot of times you'll get maybe a discount in the registration fees if you are a member. So there are various benefits that way as well. Potential mentorship opportunities, meeting other people and having, maybe if you have a particular interest in an area and you might meet someone in a professional organization that is an expert in that area and maybe they will mentor you. So you could potentially meet up with people who might help introduce you to opportunities to advance your career that you might not have had otherwise. And so there are other career resources, such as job listings too, that most of the organizations also provide to their members. One thing that I think is interesting that sometimes students will mention is that, hey, if you join a professional organization, you can put that on your resume. I would agree that you can do that. I don't think that's really a very good reason to join a professional organization. Because a lot of them will pretty much let anyone join that can pay the membership dues. For example, pretty much anyone can join NAVTA. You don't have to be a veterinary technician. You don't really even have to be working in veterinary medicine. You can join as, I think they call it, an associate member. It's not a full member, but you can join. You can't vote or hold an elected office. But, in those instances, I think, does it really mean that much to put it on your resume? Because what would mean more to me if you're going to put something like that on a resume would be to put that you were the secretary or the treasurer or the president, of an organization and that you held a leadership position. That's a good resume builder. I'm not sure if just listing membership in a professional organization really does that much to boost your resume. The other thing that I like to bring up here is just to, a lot of times we think about the tangible benefits of joining a profession, and so NAVTA offers a pretty good list of various tangible benefits, and a lot of those are, like discounts for various things. So if you're a member of NAVTA, you can get some discounts on things like maybe pet insurance or other discounts on textbooks or, supplies, things like that. So there often is tangible benefits. You also get access to the NAVTA journal when you join. But I like to kind of change the focus. So we're not really looking at joining a professional organization just so we can get those tangible benefits. I can get that discount on a nice stethoscope or the discount to get a policy, health insurance, pet health insurance policy for my pet. I really think that we really need to change the way we look at that and think of this more as, if I join this professional organization, how can I help make change within the profession? And how do these professional associations or organizations help advance change within our profession? I think that really needs to be the bigger reason for why we join organizations. Let's join the organization, be active in it, and help create positive change within the profession. I want to talk just very briefly about NAVTA specialties. Of course, as I've mentioned, NAVTA is our National Veterinary Technician Organization. And so NAVTA created the first specialty for veterinary technicians in the mid-1990s, and that was in veterinary emergency and critical care. So since then, there have been quite a few more specialties approved by NAVTA and in various areas. I think I have a slide coming up that actually will show all 16 of them, but in total, there are 16 different specialties offered now by NAVTA. The requirements for each can vary. Generally speaking, there's a requirement to be working so many hours in the specialty area, writing up case reports, and passing a comprehensive exam. These take a lot of time and are not easy to achieve. They can be a great way to advance your standing in the profession. And that's the end of my presentation on professional organization.